Hi there. I'm Richie Glover of McClintock High School, and today in this judge training video, I want to talk a little bit about being a good tournament citizen and giving good quality feedback to students. Your feedback as a judge is enormously important and enormously valuable, and I want to give you some tips and ideas about how you can best maximize your role as a judge to be as educational as possible for the students, um, because that's really what we're all in it for, right? So the first thing that I want to talk about is in the subject of being a good tournament citizen is fairly straightforward, and that is treat the students with respect and dignity. Um, be kind with your feedback. Don't just give good comments or like positive comments. Don't blow smoke at them and tell them that everything's perfect because there's really nothing worse than getting a ballot back that says "Nice job, that was great," and has sixth place written on it. That's a real bummer for them. Um, it's a real bummer for us as a coach because at that point, I don't know why you gave them sixth place. I don't know why they got the speaker points they got. I don't know what they can do to improve in order to get a better rank on your ballot. So make sure that you're giving good constructive criticism, but make sure it's constructive criticism. Be kind about it. Be generous with your time and your feedback so that it's respectful and kind and useful rather than harsh or cruel, because that's also a real bummer as a coach is when I get a ballot back that's just scathing and I have to soothe a kid's hurt feelings. And even though the criticism that's been leveled may be valid, the kid's not hearing that anymore because it was particularly mean. So don't hold back criticism, but also be kind and respectful about offering criticism, um, as much as you're able, because that's going to help ensure that that criticism is heard and understood and used. Um, and that criticism is enormously valuable to us. It really is the lifeblood of this activity is getting ballots back from judges. That helps us as coaches know what to help our students improve. It helps the students know what they need to work on. That feedback is enormously valuable to us. Um, and so make sure that your constructive criticism is as good as possible. Um, the next thing I want to talk about is that you should make sure where you are where you need to be on time and prepared. That means that if you're going to judge a debate round, you should be there as early as possible before the round starts, usually 10 to 15 minutes before the round is posted to start. You should have sufficient uh, tools to take notes on the debate round or flow the round. Um, if you're judging something like extemp or impromptu, the students are going to need time signals in order to manage their time effectively in the speech. And so you should be prepared to give those time signals. That's a little difficult on this kind of platform because students won't always see you hold up your hand for time signals. So make sure you talk with the students about how they would best like to get time signals. um, I try and have my students keep their own time as they speak, but that doesn't always work out so well. It's kind of different. You may need to give verbal time signals as they go along. Whatever it might be, work it out with the competitors in the room, but be willing to do that and be prepared to do that. The next thing that I want to talk about is being patient with technology. All of this is new to us. The NSDA campus platform that we're using for judging rounds is new. Tabroom's been around for several years now, but the campus platform where we do synchronous rounds, that's brand new. And there may be some bugs, and uh, things may get a little rough. So be prepared for that. Streaming video and audio is really bandwidth intensive, and not everybody necessarily has the best quality internet service. People may not have access to the best quality microphones or cameras. Um, so be patient about that sort of thing and be willing to adjust as needed, um, to make sure that competitors get an equal time to talk. Try and not let um, glitches or bugs affect your judgment of the performance, or give additional time to allow for those kinds of things to happen, and maybe uh, additional performances, whatever needs to happen. Make affordances for things like glitches and power outages and so forth. Above all else, really, try not to make anybody feel bad about it. I guarantee you, if a competitor is speaking to you and their whole stream glitches out and they're in the middle of their performance and can't do anything about it, they're going to feel bad enough as it is. So try not to make anybody feel bad about it. We're working in a system that has a wide number of disparities as far as like access to technology, access to good bandwidth internet, things like that, and additionally a platform that's new. So please be patient with the technology platform, which I know is a tall order. On the best days, I've worked with technology for a long time and I understand how frustrating it can be, but try your best to be as patient as possible uh, with the students and make affordances for catastrophes that might happen. Finally, turn in your ranks and decisions just as soon as possible. I think I mentioned this in the last video as well, but if you're doing particularly a synchronous round, we use the ranks and results of, for example, early debate rounds to pair later debate rounds. So we need those decisions and ranks as soon as possible. Since this platform allows you to edit feedback until the end of the tournament in most cases, you can go back and edit your feedback later as long as you get the like minimum required feedback in there to submit the ballot just as soon as possible. And you can go back and edit that as much as you want throughout the remainder of the tournament. But the sooner we get those results, the sooner the tournament can proceed, which is what we all want, to keep tournaments running on time so we don't all wind up sitting around at our computers on these meetings until 11 o'clock at night. The next thing that I want to discuss is how to give good feedback. And I'm going to break this into a list of do's and don'ts. So there are some things, we'll start with the don'ts actually, because there are some things that you shouldn't be evaluating students on. And I want to make sure that we clarify those things before we talk about the things that you should be evaluating students on, and things that you should include in your feedback. So the first thing that you shouldn't evaluate students on is your own personal or political beliefs about the world. Uh, this is super important. One of the things that we try to do, one of the things that this activity is structured to do, is to teach students to speak to multiple sides of an issue, right? And it's really important that we as judges leave our sort of personal beliefs about the world outside the room. This is especially true in debate rounds. Um, we need to leave ourselves out of the conversation a little bit, which can be very difficult. But students are taught to argue on both sides of a topic. Um, and it's important that we sort of leave our own opinions on the matter out in order to give fair hearing to both sides of the argument, um, and fairly adjudicate them on that front. Additionally, if we leave our personal or political beliefs outside the room, performers who are doing uh, pieces of literature that may not align with our own beliefs about the world, or who have written speeches that may not align with our own beliefs about the world, uh, are effectively shut down before they even begin if we bring our own beliefs into the room with us. So try your best to leave your own beliefs about the world outside the room and to focus strictly on performance. We'll talk about that a little bit later. The next thing that you should absolutely never use when making judgments is students' racial identity, gender identity, or sexual orientation, or that of their characters. Um, it's really important that this be a space where everyone feel comfortable and welcome. And that's really impossible when our implicit biases take over. Um, Beyond Resolved is a really interesting organization that is student led, and they are doing some really good implicit bias training. I have a video that I will try and link in the description here that is implicit bias training for judges that will allow you to overcome any implicit biases you may have and evaluate the competitor sort of on their own merits rather than on any particular characteristic about them. I regret that that has to be said, but it does have to be said that we all have certain implicit biases that will overtake us and that will impact our judgment, and we want to do our best to mitigate that as much as possible in order to be as fair as possible to all of the variety of points of view that come to this activity. The next thing that you should avoid talking about is anything related to the student's wardrobe choice. Even if you like a thing, it's best just not to talk about it. It's best not to mention it on a ballot. We encourage students to look professional. We encourage professional dress and professional behavior. But we also encourage judges not to comment on those things. Commenting on those things is often problematic. Even if your comment is something like nice tie, that indicates that you're spending more time thinking about their wardrobe than about what they have to say. And that's never anything that we want students to be subject to. This is also a place where women tend to be held to a higher standard than men, and it creates some really uncomfortable and awkward situations inside the activity that we feel it's best to avoid. And so refrain from commenting on wardrobe, hair, makeup, whatever, unless with perhaps the one exception that if someone's hair is in their face, it's probably okay to tell them to get their hair out of their face, because your face is the way you communicate in most cases. So keeping hair back out of your face, if you have longer hair, is certainly a thing worth commenting on. Otherwise, leave it alone. You never know what circumstances someone's coming from. You never know what kind of clothing someone can afford. All of those things just make it a situation that is best not discussed. Again, we do our best as coaches to encourage professional dress, but the standards that go along with what professional dress looks like are widely varied and kind of problematic. So it's best just not to comment on it if you can avoid it. And finally, and I mentioned this a little earlier, don't use a student's video or audio quality as a foundation for your judgment, for your comments on a ballot. Students have access to varying degrees of quality in their technology. Some students will be able to make use of a nice camera. Some students will have better lighting in their spaces. Some students will have access to some sort of microphone that other students may not have access to. And so try not to let that impact your judgment. Actively make a choice to not let that impact your judgment. We are doing our best, and we're going to provide some training for coaches and students on how best to manage technology so that it looks consistent and good, or as good as possible, depending on the quality of the technology itself. We want to make everybody look as good as possible and have as nice looking and sounding a performance as possible, but sometimes that's just going to vary because of people's access. So don't allow that to be part of your evaluation. Here are some things that should be part of your evaluation. And the first and most important is the student's performance on its merits. Has the student moved you? Has their performance moved you? Have they presented a challenging idea or made a compelling set of arguments? Has the performance been technically competent? Is the piece cut well? Is the speech structured well? Focus on their performance rather than anything specific about their piece or their content. Stay on the subject of their performance more than anything else. And above all other things, it should be about their performance. Maybe you don't like so much the topic of their oratory. That's fine. It's still the oratory they chose to give. You can comment on it to say that maybe it could have used some more sources or citations or better sources or citations, or that the structure seemed a little off and they could reformulate it a little better. But don't necessarily judge them on the content. If you disagree with the content or whatever, that's not the point. The point is to make sure that you're judging their performance above all other things. So focus on that more than anything else. Um, Also, you should evaluate student behavior. Um, One of the things that is our responsibility is to make sure that our students are acting appropriately. So if a student is rude, if their behavior is bad in the round, if they're unkind, if they're unfriendly, if they're not paying attention, whatever it might be, you as a judge are empowered to address those things. Be respectful and be thoughtful about it, but definitely it is perfectly within your boundaries to address student misbehavior. It's especially important to address students being bigoted or unkind or cruel or boorish. Um, it's especially important to address those kinds of issues because, again, we want this to be a space where everyone feels welcome. It's hard enough to stand up in front of people and speak. It's a thing that many people are afraid of, and it's extraordinary that these young people are coming here and conquering their fear of speaking in front of people and doing a thing that most people wouldn't want to do. Um, and so it's important that we make this space feel comfortable for everybody. So definitely, it's within your power to address questions of student behavior, particularly bad student behavior, on your ballots. It's important for us as coaches to know if our students are misbehaving. Um, and finally, you should evaluate intellectual honesty. Um, the only reason that this activity succeeds, the only reason at all that this succeeds, is because it's built on a foundation of intellectual honesty. Students should not be making up their sources or their evidence. They should be providing appropriate credit to the sources that they draw upon, and they should manage their evidence fairly. There are a lot of little details about what that looks like, but you, as the judge, are empowered to evaluate concerns about intellectual honesty in the round. Um, those are perfectly reasonable to use as judgment for making a decision. If there's an egregious violation, consider bringing it to the tournament staff as well. We can't be cheating here. Um, I find it unconscionable that people think that the winning part is more important than the learning part. And when the winning part becomes more important than the learning part, this activity falls apart. Um, so you are empowered to make judgments about that. You're empowered to evaluate that sort of thing. And it's important that we make use of that in order to keep everyone honest. Um, but above all else, like I said, above all of the other things, evaluate performance more than you evaluate anything else. Hopefully, you won't run into questions of intellectual honesty. Hopefully, you won't run into issues of student behavior. Um, we as coaches do our best to make sure that our students behave well and are friendly and kind and courteous. We do our best to make sure that our students aren't putting the win, the victory above their learning process. So those things are important to us, but also it is incredibly important that our students get a fair hearing of their performance uh, more than anything else. So as a judge, if you focus on a student's performance more than anything else, you're going to be in good shape to be a good judge. If you give thoughtful, constructive feedback that helps students improve, you are a good judge. If you provide good explanations for why you've chosen to rank around this particular way or give a win this particular way, that makes you a good judge. And we're always looking for more good judges. So make sure you take your time and do those things and work through those things. And if you have any questions or if you find yourself in a conundrum, feel free to reach out. We're happy to help. We're happy to answer any questions. Um, Many of us have seen quite a bit over the years and understand just how many wild situations come up. And we are available to help you to be a better judge. Hopefully, you found this brief video series helpful. Hopefully it will make a difference in your judging. If you have specific questions on judging particular events, address those things for sure to the coach of your program, and they can help you find resources. Um, we may provide additional judge training throughout the course of the year to help judges who want to focus on particular topics get better at judging that particular event. But this is just kind of a general overview for judging. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email or get in touch with me, and I'm happy to help you. Thanks so much, and I'll see you later.